I always thought I had a good handle on boundaries, lines not to cross, people you just don't touch. And for me, at the very top of that unspoken list was Liam, my best friend's younger brother. It's not that Liam and I were close, we weren't. He was 2 years younger, had his own life, and was more of a background presence for most of the time I spent with his older brother Ethan. But that didn't stop my brain from doing well things, especially once Liam started to grow into himself. We'd all known each other since high school, but now, at 24, things had changed. I'd moved into the city after college, and Ethan and I ended up sharing an apartment. Cheaper rent, closer to work, and familiar company. Perfect. Until Liam decided to crash on our couch for a few weeks while his lease situation got sorted. At first it was fine. He was polite, quiet, helped with dishes, and only stole some of my snacks. But living with him, even temporarily, put him back in my orbit in a way I hadn't anticipated. And Liam had changed. He wasn't the lanky teenager I remembered. He'd filled out, grown a bit taller, and had this easy charm that made everyone around him relax, including me, which was a problem. I did my best to ignore it, I really did. I told myself, it's temporary, it's Ethan's little brother, it's nothing. But that only worked until about a week in, when I walked into the living room after a shower, wearing just a towel, and found Liam sprawled out on the couch in nothing but boxers, eating cereal and watching The Office reruns, like he owned the place. His eyes met mine, he didn't look away, just grinned. "Nice towel," he said, lazily popping a spoonful of cereal into his mouth. I mumbled something dumb and made a beeline to my room. I didn't miss the way his gaze lingered, or how my heart kicked up as I closed the door. I tried to laugh it off later with Ethan, telling him Liam was acting more like a roommate than a guest. "That's just him," Ethan said, not looking up from his phone. "Chill about everything. Don't let him mess with you." But it was hard not to feel like I was the one being messed with. The turning point came one Friday night. Ethan had plans, date night with someone new, and I figured I'd have the place to myself. I even debated ordering in and binging something dumb. But around 8 p.m., just as I was cracking open a beer, Liam came out of the shower, towel slung low on his hips, hair dripping, and asked casually, "You mind if I crash here tonight?" I told my friend I'd go out, but I'm not really feeling it. I blinked. "Ah, sure, it's your couch," he smirked. "Was thinking more like, here, with you." I stared. "In your room," he clarified, laughing at my expression. "Just for tonight. Couch is killing my back." That had to be a joke. But the way he said it, calm, nonchalant, like it was the most normal request in the world, threw me off completely. I hesitated. "I'll stay on my side," he added, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "Promise." I should have said no. Should have made up some excuse, or just thrown him a pillow and told him to deal. But I didn't. I nodded, told him, yeah, whatever, and grabbed an extra blanket like it was no big deal. Only, it was a big deal. A very big deal. He followed me into the room, and I pretended to be super focused on clearing some clothes off the floor while he climbed into the bed like he'd done it 100 times before. I didn't even look at him. I just shut off the light and laid down, stiff as a board, eyes wide open in the dark. For a while, it was quiet. Just the hum of the fan and our breathing. I told myself I'd fall asleep eventually. I told myself it was fine. But then he shifted. Closer. Just enough that I could feel the heat of his body near mine. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I just waited. And then, in the softest voice, he whispered, "You awake? You awake?" His voice was barely more than a breath, but it cut through the dark like a spark. I didn't answer right away. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Yeah," I finally said, my voice low, almost hoarse. There was a pause. I could feel him thinking, deciding whether to say the next thing or not. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Mind if I just stay like this?" I didn't even know what this was. He wasn't touching me, not really. But his body was close, the kind of close that made every inch of my skin feel too awake. Still, I just muttered, "Sure." And then I felt the mattress shift, just a little, as he settled in more, pulling the blanket up. His arm didn't touch me, but it hovered. I could feel the heat of him, the weight of him beside me. For the next 10 minutes, neither of us said a word. And then it happened. His fingers brushed my arm, barely a touch, like he was testing it, seeing if I'd pull away. I didn't. I couldn't. My body was locked up, tense but electric, every nerve tuned to him. "You good?" he asked, voice softer now. "I can back off." I swallowed. "It's okay." A beat passed. Then another. And then he moved his hand again, slower this time. From my arm to my wrist, then down, resting on the blanket just barely over mine. His fingers grazed the back of my hand. It wasn't even fully a touch, but it felt massive. I turned my head, trying to read him in the dark. All I could make out was the faint shape of his face, the soft rise and fall of his chest under the covers. "Liam," I said, more like a question than a name. "I know," he whispered. "I'm not supposed to." That hit me. He knew what this was, what this could mean. "I don't want to mess things up," I said, barely louder than him. "You're not." And then, without waiting, his fingers laced with mine, fully, boldly. I stopped breathing for a second. This was happening. This was real. Liam, Ethan's little brother, was lying in my bed, holding my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. After that, we lay there for what felt like forever. His thumb kept brushing little circles over the back of my hand. Slow, steady, like he was trying to ground me, or maybe himself. I didn't know what to say. My thoughts were spinning too fast. I had imagined moments like this, daydreamed in quiet guilt. But now that it was happening, I was scared to move, scared I'd ruin it, or wake up and find out it had all been some stress-fueled fantasy. And just when I started to relax into the moment, Liam said something I wasn't prepared for. "I've wanted this for a while," he whispered, "since before I moved in." My chest tightened. "You have?" I asked. He nodded. I could feel it more than see it, but I didn't think you'd be cool with it. You and Ethan are close. I didn't want to screw with that. I turned toward him, not even thinking now. Our faces were inches apart. "I'm trying really hard not to screw with it too," I said. His smile was so faint I almost missed it. "Then let's not screw with anything. Let's just be here, right now." And I couldn't argue with that. I didn't want to. So I stayed there, hand in his, heart racing, like I'd run a marathon in my sleep. We didn't kiss. We didn't do anything beyond that quiet closeness. But that night changed everything. Because when I woke up the next morning, his hand was still in mine. I woke up before him. The sunlight was sneaking through the blinds, soft and lazy, lighting the room in a warm haze. For a second, I wasn't sure where I was, that blurry early morning fog when nothing makes sense. Then I looked down. Liam's hand was still holding mine. Our fingers were intertwined, palms pressed together like we'd done it 100 times before. His breathing was slow and steady, his face relaxed in a way I didn't think I'd ever seen. He looked peaceful, and way too good lying in my bed. I didn't move. I didn't want to wake him up, and honestly, I didn't know what the hell I'd say if I did. The reality of it all was hitting me harder now that I was sober, alert, and not hidden in the dark. Liam. Ethan's brother. My roommate's brother. This was a mess. A dangerous, quiet, incredibly warm mess that I wasn't ready to let go of. But eventually he stirred. His fingers flexed around mine slightly before his eyes blinked open. He squinted at the light, then looked at me. No panic. No shame. Just that same easy calm he always carried, like nothing surprised him. "Morning," he said, his voice gravelly from sleep. "Hey." We stayed like that, just looking at each other, until I finally broke the silence. Did last night mean something? Or was that just... "It meant something," he said, cutting me off, his voice firmer now. "At least to me." That should have reassured me, but my chest was still tight. "Ethan's gonna kill me." Liam laughed. Like, actually laughed and let go of my hand to stretch, his shirt riding up just a little, exposing that small strip of skin above his waistband. I immediately looked away. "He won't," Liam said. "Not unless you tell him we're secretly planning our wedding." I gave him a look. "Liam, I'm serious," he said, rolling onto his back and looking up at the ceiling. "He might get weird, but he won't actually care. You know him. He just wants everyone to chill and be happy." I didn't respond. Because yeah, maybe Ethan wasn't the overprotective type, but this wasn't just anyone. This was me. His best friend. And his brother. "I don't want to hurt anything," I said after a while. "Our friendship, your relationship with him." "You won't," Liam replied quietly. "But if you need time, I get it." And somehow, that made it worse. Because he did get it. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't demanding anything. He was just giving me space. Like he always knew this would scare me. And maybe it did. But the bigger problem was, I didn't want it to stop. The rest of the weekend was strange in the most subtle ways. Liam didn't try anything. He didn't even bring up that night again. But the energy was different. He hovered more, stood closer when we were brushing our teeth, sat beside me instead of across the room when we watched Netflix. Nothing overt, nothing anyone else would have noticed. But I noticed. And then Ethan came home from his weekend away. "Miss me?" he said as he kicked off his shoes in the entryway. Liam and I both looked up from the couch like we'd just gotten caught with our hands in the cookie jar. Ethan didn't notice. "All good here?" he asked, tossing his keys into the bowl by the door. "Yeah," Liam said, "cool as ever." Nothing exploded. I nodded, muttering something about how quiet it was. Ethan plopped down in the armchair, grabbing the remote. "Cool, I'm too tired to deal with drama anyway." But all I could think was, if only you knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. Too much in my head. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to decide if I should talk to Liam, or Ethan, or maybe just drive away in the middle of the night and start over in another state. I was about to roll over when there was a knock. Soft. Barely audible. The door creaked open and Liam slipped inside, shutting it behind him. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, watching me. "I wasn't sure if you'd still want this," he said quietly. I didn't answer. Because I did want it. I wanted it so bad it scared the hell out of me. "Come here," I whispered. And he did. He closed the door behind him softly, then just stood there in the dark. His eyes were on me, but there was something cautious about the way he moved, like he was checking to make sure I wasn't going to change my mind. "Are you sure?" he asked. It wasn't cocky. It wasn't flirtatious. It was just him. Quiet, steady, checking in. I nodded. "Yeah." He crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed, his body half turned toward me. I could see the outline of his face in the low light from the window. How serious he looked. That surprised me. I don't know why I expected him to joke his way through this. Maybe because that would have been easier for me to brush off. But he wasn't playing. Not tonight. I sat up, resting against the headboard. For a second, we just looked at each other, this thick silence filling the space between us. Then he reached for my hand again, just like the night before, and I let him take it. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. "I kept thinking you'd freak out today," he said, "or pretend it didn't happen." "I thought about it," I admitted, "but I'd be lying to both of us." He nodded, then moved a little closer, our knees touching under the blanket. "I've been into you for a while," he said. "Longer than I probably should admit." I blinked. "You barely talked to me the first year I knew you." He smirked. "I was 17 and stupid. Didn't know what to do with it." "Do with what?" "You," he said simply. "You were Ethan's best friend. Off limits. But I still noticed you every time you came over. Every time you made him laugh. Every time you stayed for dinner." My throat went dry. I didn't expect that. I always assumed I was just background noise to him back then. "And now?" I asked. "I still feel the same," he said. "Only now I'm older, and you're single, and I'm living in your apartment, and the lines are getting blurry." He looked away, just briefly. I get it if you don't want this. If you're scared, it'll mess things up. I am scared, I said, but not of you. His eyes flicked back to mine. I wasn't sure who leaned in first. Maybe it was both of us. But suddenly, our foreheads were touching, breath mingling, fingers still tangled under the blanket. His free hand found my waist, just a gentle grip through the fabric of my shirt, and everything slowed down. Then he kissed me. Soft, careful, like he was still asking for permission with every movement. It wasn't aggressive or rushed. Just a slow build, like he wanted me to know he'd wait for me to match him. And I did. I kissed him back, more confidently than I thought I would. My hand slid to the back of his neck, pulling him closer. His lips were warm and steady, and when he sighed against my mouth, something in me caved completely. We broke apart just long enough to look at each other. Then he pushed the blanket aside and climbed into bed fully, wrapping an arm around me like we'd done this before. I've wanted to do that for a long time, he said, his breath warm against my jaw. Yeah, I said, smiling in the dark. Me too. We didn't go further than that. No rush, no pressure. We just stayed close, bodies pressed together under the covers, sharing the kind of warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. At one point, I felt him fall asleep against me, his breathing deep and even. But I stayed awake for a while, staring at the ceiling, processing what just happened, because nothing felt wrong, and that terrified me more than anything. The next morning hit different. It wasn't just the sunlight warming the sheets or the quiet hum of the city outside our window. It was the weight of Liam's arm still slung across my waist, his chest against my back, and the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing. For a few seconds, I let myself enjoy it. Then the door knocked. Yo, you guys up? Ethan's voice echoed from the hallway, casual and loud in the way only someone completely unaware could be. I'm making coffee. Liam tensed behind me. Shit, he whispered. We scrambled like two idiots. He rolled out of the bed so fast he landed on the floor with a muffled thud, grabbing the hoodie he'd left near the chair. I threw the blanket over myself like that would somehow erase the evidence of what had just happened. Yeah, be out in a sec. I called back, hoping my voice didn't sound as wrecked as I felt. Liam pulled the hood over his head and shot me a quick look. Half grin, half guilt. You good? He asked, brushing invisible lint off his shorts. Ask me again when I'm caffeinated. He chuckled, then slipped out of the room like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't kissed me last night. Like we hadn't fallen asleep holding each other like we'd done it a dozen times before. I sat there for a minute, my heart still thumping, my mind trying to catch up. It felt surreal. When I finally came out, Ethan was in the kitchen pouring coffee into chipped mugs, totally oblivious. Liam was at the counter, leaning on one elbow, sipping his like it was just another Monday. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't going to be easy, because as long as Ethan was around, we had to pretend. We had to go back to being roommates and best friends like nothing was happening behind the scenes. I took the mug Ethan handed me and leaned against the opposite counter, forcing a smile. What did I miss? I asked. Nothing, Ethan said with a yawn. Liam's got an interview later, so I'm guessing he's trying to look like a functioning adult for once. Trying, Liam said, throwing me a glance over the rim of his mug. Subtle, fast, but loaded. I nearly dropped my coffee. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of small talk and silent eye contact. Every now and then, I'd catch Liam watching me when Ethan wasn't looking. Sometimes he'd smile. Sometimes he'd just study me, like he was trying to figure out if I was freaking out or not. I wasn't. I was. But not in the way he probably expected, because no part of me regretted last night. If anything, I kept replaying it in my head like some secret I didn't want to give up. The way his lips felt. The way he held me like it meant something. The way he whispered, "Are you sure?" Like he was worried about breaking me. And maybe that's what made it harder. I wasn't broken. I just didn't know how the hell to do this. Later that evening, Ethan left to meet up with some coworkers for drinks. And the second the front door closed, Liam appeared in the hallway, like he'd been waiting for the sound. He leaned against the doorframe to my room, arms crossed. You okay? He asked. I think so. Because you've been avoiding eye contact all day. Not true, I said. Then immediately looked away, proving his point. He smiled and stepped into the room. You can say it, you know. Say what? That you don't want to do this? I frowned. That's not what I'm thinking. Then what are you thinking? I stared at him. This guy, this calm, confident, stupidly attractive guy, was my best friend's brother, and I was falling into something that felt way too big, way too fast, but I couldn't lie. I'm thinking I like waking up next to you, I said, and that I hate pretending we're nothing. He crossed the room in 2 steps and kissed me. Harder this time, less tentative, like he'd been holding it in all day. You won't have to pretend for long, he whispered against my lips. We'll figure it out. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. Because the truth was, I'd already crossed the line, and I wasn't turning back. It was easier to keep things quiet than I thought it would be. At least at first. Liam and I found this rhythm. Stolen moments behind closed doors, quiet conversations late at night, subtle brushes of hands when no one was watching. We didn't push anything too far. There was no pressure to define it. It was just us, in the space between what we were allowed to feel and what we actually wanted. And maybe that's why it worked for a little while. But nothing like that stays simple forever. Especially not when you live in a 2-bedroom apartment with the one person who would absolutely lose his shit if he found out. It was a random Wednesday when the cracks started showing. Ethan had taken the day off work. Something about needing a mental health break and binge watching the Lord of the Rings extended editions. Liam was supposed to be out most of the day for a class and then a study group, so I figured I had some time to just breathe. Instead, I walked into the kitchen mid-afternoon and saw Liam standing at the fridge, still in his hoodie from that morning, barefoot, pouring himself orange juice straight into his mouth like a savage. "Thought you had class," I said. He smirked, wiping his mouth. "Cancelled. Professor's out sick." "Study group? Got moved to tomorrow." We stood there for a beat. I could feel the pull in the air again, the gravitational thing between us that hadn't let up since that first night. It was annoying how fast it kicked in. One look, one dumb smile, and I was right back there, wanting to reach out and pull him in. "I've got an hour," I said, not meaning to say it out loud. He tilted his head. "An hour before what?" "Before Ethan comes looking for me, or before I remember I'm supposed to be acting normal." He grinned, then set the juice down and stepped closer. "You're doing fine." "No, I'm doing terrible," I whispered, backing up until my hip bumped the edge of the counter. "You make it look easy." "It's not." He was right in front of me now, eyes soft, hands brushing the hem of my shirt like he didn't know what to do with them. "Last night," he said quietly, "when I left your room, I didn't want to. I didn't want you to either." His hand slid under my shirt, fingers warm against my waist. It wasn't even sexual, just intimate, that small, steady touch that makes you feel known. And then, like clockwork, the front door slammed. Liam's eyes widened, and he pulled back fast, stepping away just as Ethan's voice echoed down the hallway. "Yo, anyone home?" I grabbed a dish towel and pretended to be drying a pan. "Kitchen!" I called back, trying not to sound like I'd been seconds away from doing something deeply inappropriate, 5 feet from the toaster. Ethan strolled in, carrying a bag of snacks and 2 beers. "Movie marathon needs fuel," he announced. "Also, are either of you eating the pizza in the fridge, or can I claim it?" Liam turned his back to us and casually opened the fridge again, playing it cool. "Yours." Ethan looked at me. "You good?" "Yeah," I said, voice a little too high. "Totally." He narrowed his eyes like he was trying to read me, then shrugged and popped the cap off his beer. "Cool. I'll be in the living room being useless if either of you wants to join." When he left, the silence between Liam and me was loud. "That was close," he muttered. "Too close." We didn't touch again the rest of the day. We barely made eye contact. But that night, after Ethan finally crashed on the couch during his 7th hour of Middle-earth, I slipped into Liam's room. He was already waiting, sitting up in bed, phone in hand, lights off except for the soft glow of the screen. "I thought you weren't coming," he said quietly. "I shouldn't be here." "But you are." I shut the door behind me. "Yeah, I am." He lifted the blanket, a silent invitation, and I climbed in beside him. There were no big declarations, No plans for what we were or what we'd become, just the warmth of his body next to mine, his hand finding mine again like it belonged there, and the quiet, terrifying truth building between us. This wasn't temporary anymore. It happened on a Sunday. The three of us were on the couch, me, Ethan, Liam, eating takeout and half watching some crime docuseries that Ethan had picked purely because of the dramatic narrator. It was one of those lazy weekends where time didn't really matter. None of us had plans. The afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across the living room. It should have felt normal, chill, but I couldn't relax. Because Liam was sitting too close. Not obviously. Nothing anyone else would notice. But his leg was pressed against mine. Lightly. Consistently. On purpose. And Ethan, for once, was noticing something. I could tell, by the way. He kept glancing between us like his brain was loading a realization in slow motion. "So you two been hanging out more lately?" he asked casually, eyes still on the screen but his tone sharp. Liam didn't flinch. "I mean, we live here. Kinda hard not to," Ethan chuckled. "Right. Just feels like you've been, I don't know, different." I shifted in my seat, suddenly too aware of everything. The air, the space between us, the way Liam hadn't pulled his leg away. Different how? I asked, trying to sound unfazed. Ethan looked at me then. Really looked. "I don't know. Just seems like there's something going on that I'm not in on." Liam and I both went still. The silence that followed was brutal. And then Ethan added, "I'm not an idiot, you know." I opened my mouth to say something. Anything. Deny it, joke it off, make a sarcastic comment, but nothing came out. My throat locked up. Liam beat me to it. "We didn't plan for it to happen," he said, his voice calm. "But it did." Ethan blinked. "Wait, did what?" "I like him," Liam said. Simple, firm, no hesitation. I've liked him for a while, and just like that, it was out. The whole unspoken thing we'd been tiptoeing around for weeks, exposed in one clean sentence. Ethan stared at us, his expression unreadable. I finally found my voice. "I was going to tell you, we both were. We just didn't know how." He rubbed his jaw, leaning back against the couch like the wind had been knocked out of him. "Well, that explains the weird energy in this place." "I'm sorry," I said. Ethan looked at me. "For what? Not telling me? Or sleeping with my brother?" "Both." He was quiet for a long beat. Then he laughed. It wasn't mocking. More like disbelief. "I knew something was off," he said, shaking his head. "I just didn't think this was it. If you're pissed." "I'm not," he said, cutting me off. "I mean, I am, kind of. But mostly I'm just trying to wrap my head around it." He looked at Liam. "And you?" Liam met his gaze. "I'm serious about him." Ethan let out a long sigh. "Well, damn, I guess I have to be okay with it now." I blinked. "Wait, really?" He shrugged. "You're both adults, and it's not like you're random strangers. Just don't make me hear anything through the wall, okay?" Liam snorted. "Gross." We all laughed. Awkward. Relieved. Kinda stunned. Later that night, when Liam and I were alone again, we sat on my bed in the dark. No sneaking around. No guilt. "I can't believe he didn't murder us," I said. "I was ready to throw myself in front of you if he tried." "Heroic." He leaned in, resting his forehead against mine. "Told you we'd figure it out." And he was right. Because it wasn't perfect. And it definitely wasn't planned. But somehow, it was exactly what we both needed. Weeks passed. Liam didn't move out. If anything, he got more comfortable. His toothbrush in my bathroom, his hoodie hanging on the back of my chair, his phone charging on my nightstand most nights. Ethan stopped pretending he didn't know. Sometimes he'd walk past us in the kitchen and mutter, "Lovebirds," under his breath, just loud enough for us to hear. but that was it. No drama. No resentment. He even started teasing Liam again like nothing had changed. It was weird. In a good way. Like once the truth was out, we could all breathe again. But what got me was how normal it felt. There was this one night, just an ordinary Tuesday. I came home late from work, completely wiped. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and found Liam in the kitchen making grilled cheese. Hoodie sleeves pushed up, hair a mess, humming something under his breath. He looked up when he saw me and smiled. Rough day? The worst. Without saying anything else, he walked over, wrapped his arms around me, and just held me there for a minute. No words, no big gesture, just warmth and quiet and him. And that's when it really hit me. He wasn't Ethan's little brother anymore. He wasn't this off-limits idea in my head. He was mine, in the realest, simplest way. I pulled back just enough to look at him. You know you're kind of everything I didn't expect, right? He smirked. You say that like it's a bad thing. No, I said. It's not. We ate on the couch, legs tangled, Netflix playing in the background. Nothing dramatic, nothing Instagram-worthy. Just the kind of moment that would have meant nothing to anyone else but everything to me. Later, as we got into bed, he rolled onto his side and looked at me like he always did. Like there was no version of the world where he'd rather be anywhere else. What? I asked. Nothing, he said. Just glad I kissed you that night. Me too. He reached for my hand under the blanket, laced our fingers together, and whispered, You think Ethan would be mad if we got a dog? I laughed. Let's survive the rest of the year without getting evicted first. He kissed my shoulder. Fine. But I'm naming him Bagel, I groaned. Please don't. But I smiled, because somehow this guy, this accidental, rule-breaking, line-crossing guy, had become my favorite part of every day, and I wasn't scared anymore.